The carnivorous human dared to save her. Korvac, a young Rizian diplomat, stared wide-eyed through the shuttle's viewport at the approaching figure in an EVA suit. Her first off-world mission had turned into a nightmare as her shuttle's engines failed catastrophically, sending her hurtling towards the massive space station Nexus 7. Alarms blared throughout the station. Nexus 7, a bustling hub at the crossroads of human and Rizian territories, faced imminent destruction. Station control barked evacuation orders, their voices tinged with panic. But one human refused to flee. Eugene Gray, a maintenance technician, clung to the station's outer hull. His comms crackled with the distress call. In that moment, he made a choice that would alter the course of interstellar relations. Ignoring direct orders, Eugene fired his suit's maneuvering thrusters, propelling himself towards the doomed shuttle. As Eugene closed the distance, he saw Korvac's terrified face. The young Rizian's features were alien to him, large, dark eyes and green-tinged skin, but her fear was unmistakably familiar. Eugene reached the shuttle's airlock and immediately set to work overriding the controls. Inside Nexus 7, chaos reigned. Station control activated defensive measures, preparing to destroy the incoming shuttle to save the station. The countdown began, each second bringing them closer to firing. Eugene's fingers flew over the airlock's panel. With a hiss, the door opened. He pulled himself inside, finding Korvac strapped into the pilot's seat. "We need to move now," he shouted, helping her into an emergency pressure suit. Korvac's movements were slow, shocked by the human's presence. Time was running out. Eugene detached Korvac's restraints and pulled her towards the airlock. Without hesitation, he leaped from the shuttle, clutching the Rizian diplomat. Behind them, station control fired. The shuttle exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Using his suit's thrusters, Eugene maneuvered them back towards Nexus 7. Korvac clung to him, her body rigid with fear. Fear of their situation, and fear of the carnivorous human who held her life in his hands. They reached the station's airlock, where a group of security personnel and medical staff waited. As soon as they were through, the security team separated them. Korvac was whisked away to quarantine, while Eugene found himself surrounded by stern-faced administrators. The gravity of his actions hit Eugene as he was informed of the numerous protocols he had violated. He had endangered the entire station with his impulsive rescue, but it was the administrator's next words that truly shocked him. "Do you realize what you've done?" one of them asked. "The Rizians are herbivores. They consider us dangerous carnivores. Your actions could be seen as an act of aggression." Eugene's mind reeled. He had saved Korvac's life, but in doing so, he may have sparked an interstellar incident. Already reports were coming in of Rizian officials demanding Korvac's release, accusing humans of kidnapping. Human representatives argued back, citing Eugene's heroism. As he was escorted to his quarters, now confined and facing possible court-martial, Eugene heard the distant sound of alarms. Military forces from both sides were mobilizing near the station. His simple act of bravery had become the flashpoint for potential war between humans and Rizians. Eugene sank onto his bunk, the weight of the situation crushing down on him. He had only wanted to save a life. Now he might be responsible for countless deaths if conflict erupted. As Nexus 7 buzzed with heightened activity, Eugene closed his eyes, wondering if the carnivorous human's daring rescue would be remembered as an act of heroism or the spark that ignited an interstellar war. Eugene's confinement in his quarters felt interminable. Days passed in a blur of anxiety and self-recrimination as he replayed the rescue over and over in his mind. The constant hum of increased activity throughout Nexus 7 served as a grim reminder of the consequences of his actions. On the fifth day, a sharp knock at his door jolted Eugene from his brooding. Two stern-faced security officers entered, flanking a tall woman with close-cropped gray hair in the bearing of someone used to command. "Mr. Gray," she said, her voice crisp and authoritative, "I'm Administrator Chen. You're to come with us immediately." Eugene's heart raced as he was escorted through the station's corridors. Security personnel lined their path, their faces taut with tension. They arrived at a conference room where a group of human and Rizian officials waited, their expressions unreadable. At the center of the room stood Korvac. Eugene's breath caught in his throat. The young Rizian diplomat looked pale and drawn, her large eyes darting nervously between the assembled officials. When her gaze landed on Eugene, something in her expression shifted. "You," Korvac said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved me." The room fell silent as Korvac took a hesitant step towards Eugene. The security officers tensed, but Administrator Chen held up a hand, stopping them from intervening. Korvac's next words sent a ripple of surprise through the room. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger now. "I owe you my life." The Rizian officials exchanged shocked glances. One of them, an older male with elaborate facial markings, leaned forward. "Diplomat Korvac, you understand that this human put you in grave danger? His actions could be interpreted as an act of aggression." Korvac shook her head emphatically. "No, counselor. I was there. I saw what he did. This human risked everything to save me. How can that be aggression?" As the implications of Korvac's words sank in, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The human officials looked cautiously optimistic, while their Rizian counterparts seemed uncertain. Administrator Chen cleared her throat. "In light of Diplomat Korvac's statement, we believe it's crucial to facilitate further dialogue between Mr. Gray and the Rizian delegation. Perhaps this incident can serve as a catalyst for improved understanding between our species." Over the next few hours, Eugene found himself at the center of an impromptu cultural exchange. He answered countless questions about human biology, behavior, and motivations. The Rizians seemed particularly fixated on human dietary habits. "But you consume flesh," one Rizian scientist said, unable to hide his revulsion. "How can a species capable of such savagery also display altruism?" Eugene struggled to find the right words. "Being omnivores doesn't define our entire nature. We're capable of compassion, empathy. When I saw Korvac in danger, I didn't see an alien or a potential meal. I saw someone who needed help." As Eugene spoke, he noticed a group of human scientists observing him intently, taking notes and exchanging whispers. He later learned that they were conducting a psychological assessment, fascinated by his unusually high empathy levels. The tense discussions were interrupted by the arrival of two imposing figures, Admiral Marcus Blackwood of the Human Defense Force and General Zaxler of the Rizian Military Command. Their presence brought a new gravity to the proceedings. Admiral Blackwood, a barrel-chested man with a neatly trimmed beard, addressed the room. "While we appreciate the progress being made here, we cannot ignore the military buildup occurring outside the station. General Zaxler and I will be engaging in high-level talks to de-escalate the situation." As the two military leaders departed for their private meeting, Eugene couldn't help but feel a mixture of hope and apprehension. The fate of human Rizian relations seemed to hang in the balance, and he was somehow at the center of it all. Over the next few days, Eugene found himself part of a hastily organized cultural exchange program. He attended lectures on Rizian history, sampled, with some difficulty, traditional Rizian cuisine, and even attempted to learn a few phrases in the complex Rizian language. Korvac became a frequent presence at these events, often seeking Eugene out to ask questions or share insights. Despite the circumstances, Eugene found himself drawn to her curiosity and intelligence. Their growing connection did not go unnoticed by the officials monitoring their interactions. However, not everyone on Nexus 7 embraced the spirit of cultural exchange. Eugene became aware of a growing undercurrent of discontent among some human residents. Whispers of alien sympathizer followed him through the corridors, and he noticed hostile glares from a group of humans led by a charismatic man named Victor Kane. Kane's voice carried through the station's promenade one day as Eugene passed by. "We shouldn't be catering to these herbivores. Humans are the superior species. This incident proves it. We saved them, and how do they repay us? By threatening war." Eugene quickened his pace, troubled by Kane's words and the murmurs of agreement from the crowd. He reported the incident to Station Security Chief Liam O'Connor, a gruff Irishman with a no-nonsense attitude. O'Connor frowned as he listened to Eugene's report. "I'm aware of Kane and his followers. We're keeping a close eye on them, but we have to be careful. Cracking down too hard could inflame tensions further." As Eugene left O'Connor's office, he noticed a group of Rizians huddled near a maintenance hatch, speaking in hushed tones. One of them, a lithe female with intricate patterns on her skin, cast a furtive glance in Eugene's direction before the group dispersed. Unease settled in Eugene's stomach. Despite the progress being made in official channels, he couldn't shake the feeling that undercurrents of mistrust and potential conflict still ran deep on both sides. That night, as Eugene tried to sleep, his mind raced with the complexities of the situation. He had saved one life, but now the fate of two species seemed to rest, at least in part, on his shoulders. As he drifted off, his last thoughts were of Korvac's grateful smile and the hope it represented for a peaceful resolution to this interstellar crisis. Eugene's restless slumber was shattered by the blaring of alarms. He jolted awake, heart racing as the station's emergency lights bathed his quarters in an eerie red glow. The intercom crackled to life with Administrator Chen's tense voice. "All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Adrenaline surging, Eugene rushed to report to his assigned post in engineering. The corridors were a chaotic mix of panicked civilians and determined crew members. As he rounded a corner, he collided with a familiar figure. Korvac. "Eugene!" she exclaimed, her large eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" Before he could respond, Chief O'Connor's gruff voice cut through the din. "Gray, get to engineering now. We need all hands on deck." With an apologetic glance at Korvac, Eugene sprinted towards engineering. The usual hum of machinery had transformed into a cacophony of alarms and stressed metal. Chief Engineer Rodriguez barked orders as his team scrambled to stabilize the station's systems. "Gray, thank God," Rodriguez said as Eugene entered. "The shields are failing. We're getting hit by a massive solar flare, and our power grid can't keep up." Eugene's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The shield generators were operating at 200% capacity, far beyond their design limits. If they failed, the station and everyone on it would be bathed in lethal radiation. As Eugene worked frantically to reroute power and stabilize the shields, an idea began to form. He recalled a conversation with Korvac about Rizian energy systems. Their technology utilized a unique crystal matrix that could absorb and redistribute massive amounts of energy. "Chief," Eugene called out, "I think I might have a solution, but it's going to require cooperation with the Rizians." Rodriguez looked skeptical but desperate. "At this point, I'm open to anything. What's your plan?" Eugene quickly outlined his idea to integrate Rizian crystal technology with the human shield generators. It was risky and unprecedented, but it might be their only chance. Administrator Chen's voice came over the intercom again, this time addressing the entire station. "Attention all residents of Nexus 7. We are facing a critical emergency due to an unexpected solar flare. I am calling for full cooperation between all species on this station. Our survival depends on it." As Eugene rushed to present his plan to the command staff, he passed through the main concourse. The scene that greeted him was one of barely suppressed chaos. Victor Kane and his followers had gathered in force, their angry voices rising above the general commotion. "This is what happens when we let aliens infiltrate our station," Kane shouted, his face red with fury. "How do we know the Rizians didn't cause this flare?" Eugene pushed through the crowd, ignoring Kane's inflammatory rhetoric. He burst into the command center, where Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor were engaged in a heated argument. "Gentlemen," Eugene interrupted, "I have a proposal that might save us all, but it requires immediate cooperation between humans and Rizians." As Eugene laid out his plan, he noticed Dr. Elias Thornton hovering at the edge of the room, an odd expression on his face. The scientist seemed torn between speaking up and remaining silent. Admiral Blackwood nodded grimly as Eugene finished. "It's a long shot, but it's the best option we have. General Zaxelor, we need your people's assistance." The risen general's face was a mask of conflicting emotions. "Very well," he said finally, "but know that this changes nothing about our larger disagreements." As preparations for Eugene's plan began, Dr. Thornton approached Admiral Blackwood. "Sir," he said in a low voice, "there's something you need to know about the Rizians. My team has made a discovery that could change everything." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Not now, Doctor. Whatever it is, it can wait until we've survived this crisis. Eugene, overhearing the exchange, felt a new wave of unease wash over him. What had Thornton discovered, and how would it affect the fragile cooperation they had just established? As Eugene and a mixed team of human and Rizian engineers raced to implement his plan, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were balanced on a knife's edge. The solar flare threatened their immediate survival, but the undercurrents of distrust and hidden agendas could prove just as deadly in the long run. The station shuddered as another wave of radiation battered the failing shields. Time was running out. Eugene looked at the faces around him, human and Rizian, all focused on the task at hand. In this moment, their differences didn't matter. Survival did. "All right," Eugene said, taking a deep breath, "let's do this." As they began the delicate process of integrating the Rizian crystals into the human shield generators, Eugene caught sight of Korvac watching from a nearby observation window. Their eyes met, and in that moment, he saw a glimmer of hope for the future. If they could just survive the present. The station trembled as the shield generators strained under the onslaught of the solar flare. Eugene held his breath, watching the energy readouts fluctuate wildly as the Rizian crystals integrated with the human technology. Suddenly, the alarms fell silent. The red emergency lights faded, replaced by the station's standard illumination. A collective sigh of relief echoed through engineering. "It worked," Chief Rodriguez said, his voice filled with disbelief and admiration. "Gray, you magnificent bastard. It actually worked." Eugene allowed himself a moment of pride before the reality of their situation came crashing back. The crisis had been averted, but the underlying tensions remained. Over the next few days, a tentative atmosphere of cooperation settled over Nexus 7. Humans and Rizians worked side by side to repair the damage caused by the solar flare. Eugene found himself at the center of attention, lauded by both species for his innovative solution. During a formal recognition ceremony, Administrator Chen praised Eugene's quick thinking. "Mr. Gray's actions exemplify the potential for collaboration between our species," she said, her eyes darting between Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor. As Eugene accepted the commendation, he noticed Dr. Thornton lurking at the edge of the gathering, his face a mask of barely concealed agitation. Before Eugene could approach him, Chief O'Connor appeared at his side. "Gray, we need to talk," O'Connor said in a low voice. "There's been an incident." Eugene followed O'Connor to a secluded corner of the promenade. The security chief's face was grim as he explained. Victor Kane and his followers attacked a group of Rizian civilians. 3 injured, 1 critical. Eugene's stomach dropped. "How did this happen? I thought you were monitoring them." O'Connor's teeth gritted. "We were, but they're getting bolder, and their numbers are growing. This is just the beginning, I'm afraid." As if to punctuate O'Connor's words, a commotion erupted nearby. A group of humans, led by Kane, had cornered a Rizian family. Kane's voice carried across the promenade, filled with venom. "We know what you're really up to," he shouted. "You think you can infiltrate our station, poison our people?" Eugene moved to intervene, but O'Connor held him back. "Security's on the way. We can't risk you getting involved, not with your newfound status." Forced to watch helplessly, Eugene saw security officers arrive and disperse the crowd. As Kane was led away, his eyes locked with Eugene's. The hatred in that gaze sent a chill down Eugene's spine. Later that evening, Eugene found himself unable to sleep, haunted by the day's events. A soft chime at his door startled him. It was Korvac. "Eugene, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "Something's wrong. My people, they're not telling me everything." Eugene ushered her inside, keenly aware of the risk she was taking by coming to him. Korvac explained that she had overheard a conversation between General Zaxelor and Vexara, mentioning a contingency plan and genetic safeguards. "I don't understand what's happening," Korvac said, her large eyes filled with confusion and fear. "But I trust you, Eugene. Will you help me find the truth?" Eugene nodded, realizing that this could be the key to unraveling the growing tensions. "We'll need to be careful," he warned. "If what you've heard is true, we could be dealing with something far bigger than we imagined." Over the next few days, Eugene and Korvac began their covert investigation. They combed through station logs, analyzed communication patterns, and discreetly questioned both humans and Rizians. Their efforts led them to a heavily secured section of Nexus 7, ostensibly reserved for diplomatic quarters. Using Korvac's access codes and Eugene's engineering knowledge, they managed to bypass the security protocols. What they found inside made Eugene's blood run cold. A fully equipped biological research lab hidden in the heart of the station. "This can't be," Korvac whispered, her hands shaking as she accessed a computer terminal. "These files, they're talking about weaponizing our own biology against humans." Eugene's mind raced as he scanned the data. Not only were the Rizians developing a biological weapon, but there was evidence of extensive genetic manipulation within their own population. The implications were staggering. Before they could process the information, an alarm blared. They had triggered a silent security protocol. Eugene quickly downloaded as much data as he could onto a portable drive. "We need to go now," he urged Korvac. They sprinted through the corridors, the sound of pursuing footsteps growing closer. At a junction, Eugene made a split-second decision. "We need to split up," he said, pressing the data drive into Korvac's hands. "Get this to Admiral Blackwood. I'll lead them away." Korvac hesitated for a moment, then nodded. As she disappeared down one corridor, Eugene ran in the opposite direction, his heart pounding. He rounded a corner and found himself face-to-face with Vexara, her eyes cold and calculating. "Mr. Gray," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "I believe you've seen things you shouldn't have." Eugene backed away, his mind racing for a way out. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from behind Vexara. "Step away from him," Korvac commanded, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. Vexara turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Korvac, what are you doing?" Taking advantage of the distraction, Eugene ducked past Vexara. He grabbed Korvac's hand, and together they ran, leaving the stunned Rizian operative behind. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Nexus 7, alarms blared throughout the station. Eugene realized with growing dread that their actions had set in motion a chain of events that could not be undone. They emerged onto the main promenade, now a scene of chaos. Humans and Rizians alike were in a panic, rumors of biological weapons and genetic manipulation spreading like wildfire. In the distance, Eugene could see Victor Kane rallying his followers, their angry shouts adding to the din. Amidst the chaos, Eugene spotted Admiral Blackwood conferring urgently with his staff. He pulled Korvac toward them, knowing that their next actions would determine the fate of both species on Nexus 7. As they approached, Eugene could see the iron will on Blackwood's face. The Admiral looked up, his eyes widening as he recognized Eugene and Korvac. "Sir," Eugene said, his voice hoarse from exertion, "we have information that could change everything, but we need to act fast." Blackwood nodded, his expression grave. "You'd better come with me, both of you. We don't have much time." As Eugene and Korvac followed the Admiral, they could feel the weight of countless lives resting on their shoulders. The truth they carried had the power to prevent a catastrophic war, or to ignite one. 1. The fate of 2 species now rested in their hands. Eugene's mind raced as he followed Admiral Blackwood through the crowded corridors of Nexus 7. Alarms blared, drowning out the panicked voices of humans and Rizians alike. Korvac kept pace beside him, her large eyes darting nervously from side to side. "We need to act fast," Blackwood said, ushering them into a secure command center. "What exactly did you two uncover?" Eugene pulled out the data drive, his hands shaking slightly. "Sir, the Rizians have been developing biological weapons designed to target humans, but there's more. They've also been conducting extensive genetic manipulation on their own population." Blackwood's face hardened as he reviewed the information. "This changes everything. We need to get this data out to everyone on the station, human and Rizian alike." "I have an idea," Eugene said, his engineering mind already formulating a plan. "We can modify the maintenance drones to act as mobile transmitters. They can broadcast this information throughout the station and to the ships outside." Korvac nodded, her diplomatic instincts kicking in. "And while Eugene works on that, I can reach out to moderate factions on both sides. We need to prepare them for what's coming." Blackwood gave them a curt nod. "Do it. I'll coordinate with security to buy you as much time as possible. As Eugene set to work on the drones, his hands moving with practiced efficiency, Korvac began making discreet calls. The tension in the air was palpable, broken only by the occasional tremor that shook the station. Suddenly, a new alarm blared through the command center. Blackwood's face paled as he read the incoming report. "We have a new problem. Dr. Thornton has released some kind of biological agent into the air filtration system. It's affecting the Risians." Eugene's stomach dropped. "What? Why would he do that?" "He was working on a human-specific agent based on the Risian research," Blackwood explained grimly. "Looks like he decided to test it without authorization." Through the command center's windows, they could see Risian civilians stumbling, their movements uncoordinated. Some collapsed to the ground, while others leaned against walls for support. "We need to hurry," Korvac said, her voice tight with concern. "If the Risian military sees this as an attack—" She didn't need to finish the thought. Eugene redoubled his efforts on the drones, his fingers flying over the controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked, acutely aware of the countdown ticking away in his mind. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, Eugene stepped back from the workbench. "They're ready," he announced, gesturing to the modified drones hovering nearby. Korvac joined him, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and perseverance. "I've done what I can to prepare our contacts. It's time." With a nod from Blackwood, Eugene activated the drones. They zoomed out of the command center, spreading throughout Nexus 7 like metallic insects. Screens throughout the station flickered to life, broadcasting the unaltered data about Risian genetic engineering and their biological weapons program. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Humans gasped in shock at the extent of Risian capabilities, while Risians reeled from the revelations about their own government's deceptions. Arguments broke out in every corridor, with some calling for immediate military action, while others pleaded for calm. Amidst the pandemonium, a new voice cut through the noise. Captain Darius Chen of the human science vessel Horizon appeared on the main communication channels. "People of Nexus 7, human and Risian alike." Chen's calm voice resonated through the station. "I come offering my services as a neutral mediator. We must not let fear and mistrust drive us to conflict." Eugene and Korvac exchanged a hopeful glance, but their moment of relief was short-lived. A furious General Zaxalor appeared on a separate channel, his face contorted with rage. "This unprovoked attack on my people will not stand," the Risian general bellowed. "Prepare for a full assault on Nexus 7. Blackwood's face set in dogged dedication. He opened a direct channel to Zaxalor, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "General, I propose an immediate face-to-face meeting on neutral ground. We must prevent further escalation." Tense seconds ticked by as they waited for Zaxalor's response. Finally, the Risian general spoke, his voice cold. "I accept, but on one condition. The humans Gray and Korvac must be present as witnesses and mediators." Eugene felt the weight of countless lives settle on his shoulders as Blackwood turned to him and Korvac. "Are you prepared for this?" the Admiral asked. Eugene met Korvac's gaze, seeing his own mix of fear and persistence mirrored in her eyes. They nodded in unison. "We'll do it," Eugene said, his voice steadier than he felt. As preparations for the meeting began, Eugene and Korvac found a moment alone. The reality of their situation crashed over them like a wave. "How did we end up here?" Eugene asked, running a hand through his hair. "A few weeks ago, I was just trying to keep the station's systems running." Korvac placed a gentle hand on his arm. "And I was struggling to find my place among my own people. Now we're the ones who might prevent a war." Eugene looked down at her hand, then back up to her face. The bond between them had grown stronger through their shared trials, evolving into something deeper than either of them had anticipated. "Whatever happens," Eugene said softly, "I'm glad you're here with me." Korvac's fingers intertwined with his, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. "As am I, Eugene. As am I." Their moment of connection was interrupted by a call from Blackwood. It was time. As they made their way to the designated meeting point, Eugene and Korvac steeled themselves for the challenge ahead. They were no longer outcasts or outsiders. They were now at the very center of a political and diplomatic storm that would determine the fate of humans and Rizians alike. The doors to the conference room slid open, revealing a tense tableau. Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor sat at opposite ends of a long table, their faces masks of carefully controlled emotion. Captain Chen stood to one side, his presence a reminder of the possibility of neutral mediation. Eugene and Korvac took their seats, acutely aware of the historical weight of this moment. As the talks began, they knew that their unique perspective, their ability to see beyond the prejudices and fears of both sides, might be the key to preventing catastrophe. The future of two species now hung in the balance, and the next few hours would determine whether that future would be one of war or peace. Eugene took a deep breath, steadying himself for the diplomatic battle ahead. Whatever the outcome, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The conference room doors slid shut with a soft hiss, sealing the fate of two species within its walls. Eugene and Korvac took their seats, acutely aware of the tension crackling between Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor at opposite ends of the long table. Captain Chen stood to one side, his presence a silent reminder of the possibility of neutral mediation. "Let's begin," Blackwood said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We're here to address the recent actions taken by both sides and find a path forward." Zaxelor's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "You mean the unprovoked attack on my people? The release of a biological agent specifically targeting Rizians?" Eugene cleared his throat, drawing the attention of both leaders. "If I may, we have evidence that suggests the situation is more complex than it appears. Both sides have been manipulated." A sudden tremor shook the room, cutting off Eugene's words. The lights flickered, and a distant boom echoed through the station's superstructure. "What was that?" Korvac asked, her large eyes widening with alarm. Before anyone could respond, Security Chief Liam O'Connor's voice crackled over the comm system. "Admiral, we have a situation. Victor Kane's group has launched a coordinated attack on key systems throughout Nexus 7. They're trying to sabotage the peace talks." Blackwood's face hardened. "Understood. Implement emergency protocols immediately." As if on cue, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Eugene's mind raced, his engineering instincts kicking into high gear. He pulled out his datapad, quickly accessing the station's diagnostic systems. "Sir," he said, his voice tight with urgency, "the life support systems are compromised. If we don't act fast, we could lose atmospheric integrity across multiple sectors." General Zaxelor rose to his feet, his scaled skin shimmering under the emergency lights. "This is clearly a human plot to—" "With all due respect, General," Korvac interrupted, her voice firm but diplomatic, "this attack threatens both humans and Rizians alike. We must work together if we hope to survive this." Eugene nodded, already formulating a plan. "I think I can reroute critical functions through auxiliary systems, but it's going to be tricky. We'll need to access multiple maintenance junctions spread across the station's most dangerous areas." Blackwood and Zaxelor exchanged a long look, years of mistrust and conflict hanging between them. Finally, Blackwood spoke. "We have no choice. General, I propose a temporary alliance, our people working together to save this station and everyone on it." Zaxelor's facial tendrils twitched, a sign of deep consideration in Rizian body language. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he nodded. "Agreed. I will dispatch my best technicians to assist." "I'm going with Eugene," Korvac said, her tone brooking no argument. "My knowledge of Rizian technology will be crucial in interfacing with the station's hybrid systems." As the leaders began coordinating their efforts, Eugene and Korvac slipped out of the conference room and into the chaos of the station. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over the corridors, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and ozone. They made their way to the first maintenance junction, Eugene's datapad guiding them through the least damaged sections. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Kane's followers, armed and clearly intent on causing more destruction. "Stop right there!" one of the extremists shouted, raising a makeshift weapon. Eugene's mind raced, searching for a way out. Suddenly, Korvac stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not your enemies," she said, her voice calm and resonant. "Look around you. This station is home to both humans and Rizians. If it fails, we all die together." The extremists hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Eugene seized the moment, quickly accessing a nearby control panel. With a few deft keystrokes, he triggered the fire suppression system in the corridor. Dense foam filled the air, obscuring their vision and allowing Eugene and Korvac to slip past the confused attackers. As they worked their way through the station, Eugene could feel the quality of the air deteriorating. His lungs burned with each breath, and he could see Korvac's chest heaving with increased effort. "We're running out of time," he muttered, his fingers flying over the controls at the third maintenance junction. Korvac nodded, her usually vibrant skin taking on a sickly pallor. "Eugene, look at this," she said, pointing to a data readout. "These energy signatures, they're not consistent with anything in the station's inventory." Eugene frowned, studying the information. "You're right. This weaponry is far too advanced for a fringe group like Kane's. Someone else must be involved, supplying them with technology and information." Before they could discuss further, Eugene's datapad chimed urgently. "The main environmental control hub is failing," he said, his voice tight with concern. "If we don't stabilize it soon, we'll lose life support across the entire station." They rushed to the hub, only to find the access corridor blocked by debris from a nearby explosion. Eugene studied the schematics, his face grim. "There's another way in, but—" He trailed off, looking at the radiation warning flashing on his pad. Korvac's eyes widened as she realized what he was considering. "No, Eugene, the radiation levels in there are lethal." "We don't have a choice," Eugene said, his voice soft but determined. "I can manually override the systems, but someone has to go in there." Korvac gripped his arm, her large eyes pleading. "Then I'll do it. My physiology might be more resistant to—" Eugene shook his head, gently removing her hand. "We don't know that for sure. Besides, you're needed out here. Your diplomatic skills are going to be crucial in the aftermath of all this." Before Korvac could protest further, Eugene sealed the corridor behind him and entered the environmental control hub. The air shimmered with invisible radiation, and he could feel the heat of it on his skin as he worked feverishly to bring the systems back online. Outside, Korvac coordinated with both human and Rizian teams, guiding evacuation efforts and managing resources. Her voice, steady and reassuring, helped calm the panic that threatened to engulf the station's population. Just as Eugene completed the final override, the door to the hub burst open. Victor Kane stood there, wild-eyed and armed, his weapon trained on Eugene. "Step away from the controls," Kane snarled. "I won't let you hand our future over to these aliens." Eugene, weakened by radiation exposure, stumbled back from the console. But before Kane could make another move, Korvac appeared behind him, placing herself between the two men. "Victor," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "look at what's happening. Humans and Rizians are working together right now, saving lives. This is the future, not conflict, but cooperation." Kane's hand trembled, his willpower visibly wavering. "But they're not like us. How can we trust them?" "Because we're all sharing the same struggle right now," Korvac replied. "The same fear, the same hope. That makes us more alike than different." The weapon clattered to the floor as Kane's shoulders sagged in defeat. As security personnel rushed in to apprehend him, Eugene collapsed, the toll of radiation exposure finally overwhelming him. Korvac caught him, cradling his head as medical teams surged forward. The immediate crisis had passed, but as Eugene's vision faded, he knew that this was only the beginning. The question of who had truly orchestrated this conflict loomed large, a shadow over the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. As consciousness slipped away, Eugene heard Korvac's voice, strong and clear, addressing the gathered humans and Rizians. "Today we face destruction together. Now we have the chance to build something new, a future where our differences make us stronger, not divided." The last thing Eugene saw before darkness took him was the sight of human and Rizian hands clasped together, a symbol of hope amidst the wreckage of Nexus 7. Eugene's eyes fluttered open, his vision blurry and unfocused. The sterile white ceiling of the medical bay slowly came into view as he blinked away the fog of unconsciousness. He tried to move but found his body unresponsive, a dull ache permeating every fiber of his being. "He's awake!" a voice called out, followed by a flurry of activity around him. As his senses sharpened, Eugene became aware of the various medical devices attached to his body, their steady beeps and hums a constant reminder of his precarious condition. He turned his head slightly, wincing at the effort, and saw a sight that momentarily made him question his own sanity. A human doctor stood shoulder to shoulder with a Rizian medical officer, both intently studying a holographic display of Eugene's vital signs. Their collaborative focus was so natural, so at odds with the tension that had defined human-Rizian relations for so long, that Eugene wondered if he was dreaming. "Eugene," a familiar voice called softly. He shifted his gaze to find Korvac seated beside his bed, her large eyes filled with a mixture of relief and concern. "You're going to be all right. The doctors are taking good care of you." Eugene tried to speak, but his throat was dry and raw. Korvac gently pressed a cup of water to his lips, allowing him to take small sips. As the cool liquid soothed his parched throat, Eugene's mind began to clear, memories of the crisis on Nexus 7 flooding back. "The station," he managed to croak out. "Is everyone—" "Safe," Korvac assured him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Thanks to you. Your actions saved countless lives, both human and Rizian." The human doctor approached Eugene's bedside, a datapad in hand. "Mr. Asimov, I'm Dr. Lydia Chen. You're suffering from acute radiation syndrome, but we've managed to stabilize your condition. It's going to be a long recovery process, but with the combined efforts of our medical teams, we're optimistic about your prognosis." Eugene nodded weakly, his eyes drifting to the Rizian medical officer who had joined them. The alien's skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, a visual representation of their emotional state that Eugene had learned to interpret during his time on Nexus 7. "I am Zinral," the Rizian introduced himself, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the soft light of the medical bay. "Your physiology presents unique challenges, but it has also provided us with valuable insights. The collaboration between our medical teams has already led to several breakthroughs in treatment protocols." As Eugene absorbed this information, he noticed the way Dr. Chen and Zinral interacted. Their body language spoke of mutual respect and shared purpose, a stark contrast to the wary distance that had once defined human-Rizian interactions. Over the next few days, Eugene's strength gradually returned. He watched with growing amazement as human and Rizian medical staff worked seamlessly together, their combined knowledge and skills proving far more effective than either group could have achieved alone. Korvac remained a constant presence at his bedside, her unwavering support drawing curious glances from both human and Rizian visitors. Eugene could sense the subtle shift in attitudes, the way people began to see their relationship not as an oddity, but as a possibility, a glimpse of what could be. One afternoon, as Eugene was sitting up in bed for the first time since the incident, Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxler entered the medical bay. The sight of the two leaders moving in tandem, without the usual cloud of suspicion between them, was a testament to how much had changed in such a short time. "Mr. Asimov," Blackwood began, his voice carrying a warmth that Eugene had never heard before. "On behalf of the human delegation, I want to express our deepest gratitude for your actions during the crisis. You've shown us all what can be achieved when we put aside our differences and work together." General Zaxler's facial tendrils rippled in agreement. "The Rizian people echo this sentiment. Your courage and sacrifice have opened our eyes to the potential of human-Rizian cooperation. We are in your debt." Eugene, still weak but buoyed by their words, managed a small smile. "Thank you, but I'm just one person. What matters now is what we do with this opportunity." Blackwood and Zaxler exchanged a meaningful glance before the Admiral continued. "You're right, and that's part of why we're here. In light of recent events, we've formed a joint task force to investigate the true source of the conflict that nearly destroyed Nexus 7. Zaxler picked up the thread. "We've assigned Commander Jack Hawkins and our own intelligence operative, Vexera, to lead the investigation. Their preliminary findings are troubling." Eugene leaned forward, ignoring the protest of his aching muscles. What have they found? Evidence of a third party's involvement, Blackwood said grimly. An organization that seems to have been manipulating both sides, pushing us towards war. We're calling them the Galactic Equilibrium Society, or GES. The revelation sent a chill down Eugene's spine. He glanced at Korvac, seeing his own shock mirrored in her expression. The implications were staggering. How long had this GES been influencing events? How deep did their reach extend? As if reading his thoughts, Zaxelor added, "We believe they have agents embedded within both our governments. Rooting them out will not be easy, but it's crucial if we're to prevent further manipulation." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Darius Chen, his usual crisp uniform looking somewhat worse for wear. "Admiral, General?" He nodded to each in turn. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I thought you'd want to know. We've just completed the integration of Rizian power distribution technology with our human-designed life support systems. Efficiency is up by 37%, and we're seeing similar improvements across the board." The news brought a moment of lightness to the otherwise heavy atmosphere. Eugene could see the pride in Chen's eyes, the excitement of discovery that transcended species boundaries. As the officials discussed the ongoing repairs and improvements to Nexus 7, Eugene found his gaze drawn to the viewport. Beyond the reinforced glass, he could see repair crews, human and Rizian working side by side, moving across the station's exterior. Their coordinated efforts were slowly erasing the scars left by the recent conflict, replacing them with something new, a hybrid of human and Rizian engineering that was more than the sum of its parts. The sight filled Eugene with a complex mix of emotions, hope for the future they were building, tempered by the knowledge of the challenges that lay ahead. The GES was still out there, along with those who resisted the idea of human-Rizian cooperation. And yet, as he watched the diverse crew outside working together to rebuild Nexus 7, Eugene felt a surge of tenacity. He turned back to the room where Blackwood and Zaxelor were preparing to leave. "Admiral, General," he called out, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "I want to help, whatever capacity I can serve in, whatever I can do to support this alliance and uncover the truth about GES, count me in." Korvac squeezed his hand, a gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by the others in the room. Blackwood nodded, a hint of a smile on his weathered face. "Get yourself healed up first, Asimov. Something tells me we're going to need you at full strength for what's coming." As the officials filed out, leaving Eugene and Korvac alone, the weight of what lay ahead settled over them. The peace they had fought for was real, but fragile. The true test was yet to come. To come? Eugene's gaze returned to the viewport, where the stars seemed to twinkle with new possibility. As the days passed, Eugene's strength returned gradually. The joint human-Rizian medical team monitored his progress closely, adjusting his treatment as needed. During his recovery, Eugene found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The station buzzed with renewed energy as humans and Rizians worked side by side, their collaborative efforts yielding impressive results across various departments. One afternoon, as Eugene was reviewing some engineering reports on his datapad, Commander Jack Hawkins and Vexara burst into his room, their faces etched with urgency. "Eugene, we need to talk," Hawkins said, his voice low and tense. "We've uncovered something big." Vexara's facial tendrils quivered with scarcely controlled excitement. "It's about the Galactic Equilibrium Society. We found evidence of a major operation in the works." Eugene sat up straighter, wincing slightly at the movement. "Tell me everything." The two intelligence officers shared a glance before Hawkins continued. "We've intercepted communications about an operation called Sundering. It's a large-scale sabotage effort aimed at destroying everything we've built here on Nexus 7. They want to reignite the conflict between our species," Vexara added, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. Eugene's mind raced, processing the implications. "Have you informed Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor?" Hawkins nodded. "We're meeting with them in an hour to present our findings. But there's more, Eugene. We've located a GES base of operations, an asteroid facility not far from here. We're proposing a preemptive strike." Eugene's heart rate quickened. the medical monitor beside him beeping in response. "I want in," he said without hesitation. Vexara's tendrils rippled with concern. "Eugene, you're still recovering. The radiation damage—" "I know the risks," Eugene cut in, his voice firm. "But I also know Nexus 7 systems better than anyone. If you're going up against GES tech, you'll need me." Hawkins looked skeptical, but nodded slowly. "We'll run it by the brass. Get yourself ready, just in case." After they left, Eugene sat in silence, his mind churning. The thought of GES threatening everything they'd worked for filled him with a quiet, steely grit. He was so lost in thought that he barely noticed Korvac entering the room. "Eugene?" Her voice snapped him back to the present. "What's wrong?" He met her gaze, seeing the concern in her large, expressive eyes. Slowly, he recounted what Hawkins and Vexara had told him. Korvac listened intently, her bioluminescent patterns shifting with each new piece of information. "You can't seriously be considering going on this mission," she said when he finished. "You're not fully healed." Eugene reached out, taking her hand in his. "Korvac, I have to do this. Everything we've built, everything we've fought for, it's all at risk. I can't sit by and do nothing." Korvac's grip tightened on his hand, her internal conflict visible in the swirling patterns on her skin. After a long moment, she nodded. "I understand, but promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," Eugene said, pulling her close. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor approved the mission, recognizing the critical threat posed by Operation Sundering. A joint strike team was assembled, combining the elite forces of both species. Eugene, despite the protests of his medical team, was cleared for the mission as a technical advisor. As Eugene donned a specially designed suit that would protect his still-recovering body, he caught sight of his reflection in a nearby panel. The man staring back at him looked older, more weathered, but there was a fire in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The strike team gathered in the hangar bay, a mix of human and Rizian operatives checking their gear and running last-minute system diagnostics. Eugene marveled at the seamless integration of technologies from both species, a testament to how far they'd come in such a short time. Captain Darius Chen approached Eugene, his face a mask of professional concern. "Asimov, are you sure you're up for this?" Eugene nodded, adjusting the settings on his wrist-mounted computer. "I'm sure, Captain. Someone needs to make sure all this fancy tech plays nice together." Chen clapped him on the shoulder. "Good man, I'll be monitoring the operation from the horizon. If things go sideways, we'll be there to pull you out." As the team boarded the stealth vessel, Eugene felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The ship was a marvel of engineering, its sleek design incorporating the best of human and Rizian stealth technology. As they disembarked from Nexus 7, Eugene took one last look at the station through the view screen. Korvac stood in the observation deck, her hand pressed against the glass. Eugene raised his hand in a silent farewell, hoping it wouldn't be their last. The journey to the asteroid base was tense, with each member of the strike team lost in their own thoughts. Eugene busied himself by running diagnostics on the ship's systems, marveling at the elegant fusion of human and Rizian tech. As they approached their target, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "We've encountered some kind of advanced defense grid," the pilot announced, her voice tight with concentration. Eugene sprang into action, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "I see it," he muttered, analyzing the incoming data. "It's a hybrid system, elements of both human and Rizian design. They've been learning from us." Commander Hawkins leaned over Eugene's shoulder. "Can you bypass it?" Eugene's mind raced, drawing on every scrap of knowledge he'd gained about both human and Rizian systems. "I think so, but it's going to be close." For several heart-pounding minutes, Eugene worked feverishly, writing and rewriting code on the fly. The ship shuddered as it narrowly avoided detection beams. Finally, with a triumphant cry, Eugene input the final command sequence. The alarms fell silent, and the tension in the cabin eased slightly. "We're through," Eugene announced, wiping sweat from his brow. "They never saw us coming." Hawkins nodded approvingly. "Nice work, Asimov. Now comes the hard part." The strike team disembarked onto the asteroid's surface, using magnetic boots to navigate the low-gravity environment. Eugene's heart raced as they approached the airlock, his body protesting the exertion. But as Vexara interfaced with the door controls, using a combination of Rizian biotech and human hacking tools, Eugene knew he was where he needed to be. The airlock hissed open and the team moved inside, weapons at the ready. Eugene activated his wrist computer, immediately scanning for network access points. The interior of the base was a maze of corridors and chambers, filled with a dizzying array of technology. As they delved deeper into the facility, Eugene's unease grew. The level of technological advancement on display was staggering. "They've been busy," he muttered to Hawkins. "This goes way beyond what we thought they were capable of." Hawkins nodded grimly. "All the more reason to shut them down. Let's find that data and get out of here." The team moved efficiently through the base, their diverse skills complementing each other perfectly. Human and Rizian soldiers covered each other's blind spots, their different sensory capabilities proving invaluable in the unfamiliar environment. Eugene located the main data hub, a massive room filled with servers and holographic displays. As he began the process of extracting the critical intelligence, warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the facility. "We've been made," Vexara hissed, her tendrils writhing with agitation. Hawkins raised his weapon. "Asimov, how much longer?" Eugene's fingers flew over the holographic keyboard. 2 minutes, maybe less." The sounds of approaching security forces echoed through the corridors. The strike team took up defensive positions, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. As Eugene worked frantically to complete the data extraction, the first wave of GES security forces burst into the room, the air filled with weapons fire and the crackle of energy shields. Human and Rizian operatives moved in perfect synchronization, their complementary fighting styles proving devastatingly effective against the GES guards. Eugene's suit beeped a warning. His vitals were spiking dangerously. The radiation damage to his body was taking its toll. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Eugene pushed himself to finish the download. "Got it!" he shouted over the din of battle. "Let's move!" The strike team began a fighting retreat, with Eugene using his hacking skills to seal bulkheads behind them and create distractions. As they neared their extraction point, a massive explosion rocked the facility. "What was that?" Hawkins demanded. Eugene checked his wrist computer, his eyes widening. "It's the horizon. Captain Chen is providing covering fire." The team burst out onto the asteroid's surface, where they saw the horizon engaged in a daring maneuver, its weapons blazing as it held off pursuing GES ships. As they sprinted for their stealth vessel, Eugene felt his strength failing. His vision blurred, and his legs threatened to give out. Vexara noticed his stumble and quickly moved to support him, her Rizian strength easily bearing his weight. They piled into the ship with Hawkins shouting for an immediate takeoff. As they rocketed away from the asteroid, Eugene slumped into a seat, his breathing labored. "Asimov, stay with us," Hawkins ordered, concern etched on his face. Eugene managed a weak smile. "Not going anywhere, Commander." The journey back to Nexus 7 was a blur of emergency repairs and tense silence. Eugene drifted in and out of consciousness, using what little strength he had left to help stabilize the ship's failing systems. As they approached the station, Eugene's last thought before darkness claimed him was of Korvac and the hope that their mission had been worth the cost. Eugene awoke to the familiar beeping of medical equipment. He opened his eyes to find himself back in the Nexus 7 medical bay, with Korvac asleep in a chair beside his bed. As he stirred, she woke, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him conscious. "Eugene," she breathed, taking his hand, "you're awake." Before he could respond, Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxelor entered the room, their faces a mix of concern and awe-inspiring excitement. "Mr. Asimov," Blackwood began, "how are you feeling?" Eugene attempted to sit up, wincing at the effort. "Like I've been hit by a transport ship, sir. But I'll live. What about the mission? The data?" Zaxlor's tendrils rippled with what Eugene had come to recognize as satisfaction. "The intelligence you retrieved is invaluable. We've already begun to unravel the full extent of GES's operations across the galaxy." Blackwood nodded. Your actions have likely saved countless lives, both human and Rizian. But we've also discovered something troubling. Eugene tensed, sensing the weight of the Admiral's words. The data reveals that GES has deeply embedded agents within both our governments, Blackwood continued, some in positions of significant power. The implications of this news settled heavily over the room. Eugene glanced at Korvac, seeing his own mix of shock and drive mirrored in her expression. Zaxler spoke up, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with dedication. In light of this threat, we've decided to form a permanent joint task force. Our goal will be to root out GES influence and prevent future conflicts. Blackwood turned to Eugene. We want you to be a key advisor to this initiative, Asimov. Your expertise and your commitment to human-Rizian cooperation make you uniquely qualified for this role. Eugene felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He looked around the room, at Korvac, at Blackwood and Zaxler, at the human and Rizian medical staff working seamlessly together just outside his room. He thought of everything they had accomplished, and everything that was still at stake. I'd be honored, sir, Eugene said, his voice growing stronger with each word. When do we start? As Blackwood began to outline their next steps, Eugene couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The challenges ahead were daunting, but as he looked at the diverse group of individuals around him, united in purpose, he knew that together they stood a fighting chance. The future of Nexus 7, of human-Rizian relations, and perhaps even of galactic peace, hung in the balance, and Eugene Asimov, once a simple engineer, now found himself at the very heart of it all. The days following Eugene's return from the asteroid base were a whirlwind of activity on Nexus 7. As he recovered in the medical bay, the station buzzed with renewed energy and purpose. Human and Rizian diplomats filled the corridors, their voices a cacophony of different languages, as they worked to solidify their newfound alliance. Eugene watched the comings and goings from his bed, his body still weak but his mind racing with ideas. Korvac rarely left his side, her skin pulsing with concerned patterns as she monitored his recovery. You should rest, she chided gently, noticing his eyes tracking a group of passing officials. Eugene smiled ruefully. I feel like I've done nothing but rest. There's so much work to be done. Before Korvac could respond, the lights in the medical bay flickered, then went out completely. Emergency backups kicked in a moment later, bathing the room in an eerie red glow. What was that? Eugene asked, sitting up straighter. Korvac frowned, her tendrils writhing with agitation. The third power fluctuation this week. The engineering teams claim it's just growing pains as we integrate our systems, but... Her words were cut off by a sudden hiss from the air vents. The room's atmosphere thinned noticeably, causing both Eugene and Korvac to gasp. That's not a power problem, Eugene said, his voice tight as he struggled to breathe. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the protests of his still healing body. Korvac moved to support him. Eugene, you're not strong enough. I have to see what's going on, he insisted, gritting his teeth against the pain. They made their way to the door, which refused to open automatically. Eugene pried off the manual release panel and forced the door open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos in the corridor beyond. Medical staff rushed to move critical patients, while engineers huddled around malfunctioning control panels. Admiral Blackwood's voice crackled over the station-wide comm system, distorted by interference. Attention all personnel, we are experiencing station-wide system malfunctions. Please remain calm and follow emergency protocols. Engineering teams are working to dedication the issues. Eugene shared a worried look with Korvac. This is more than just malfunctions. We need to get to the main engineering hub. As they made their way through the station, Eugene's unease grew. Everywhere they looked, systems were failing. Gravity plating flickered on and off, causing people to stumble. Holographic displays sparked and died, leaving critical information inaccessible. In the main engineering hub, they found a scene of almost unchecked panic. Human and Rizian engineers worked side by side, their fingers flying over consoles as they tried to regain control of the station's systems. Chief Engineer Zara Zai, a brilliant Rizian whose skin constantly rippled with complex equations, looked up as Eugene and Korvac entered. Asimov, thank the stars you're here. We're losing systems faster than we can bring them back online. Eugene limped to the nearest console, his eyes widening as he took in the stream of data. This isn't random. These failures are too coordinated, too precise. He began typing furiously, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. As he worked, patterns emerged from the chaos of failing systems. It's an attack, Eugene announced, his voice grim. A cyber attack unlike anything I've ever seen. It's targeting the very core of our hybrid systems. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their proudest achievement, the seamless integration of human and Rizian technology, had become their greatest vulnerability. Admiral Blackwood and General Zaxler burst into the hub, their faces etched with concern. Report, Blackwood barked. Eugene quickly explained his findings, watching as the leader's expressions darkened. GES, Zaxler hissed, his tendrils lashing with anger. They're the only ones with the capability and the motive to launch such an attack. As if to underscore his words, a new wave of failures cascaded through the station. Alarms blared as life support systems in entire sectors began to shut down. We need to act fast, Eugene said, his mind racing. I have an idea, but it's risky. We need to create a new operating system, one that combines the best of both our technologies in a way GES can't predict or exploit. Blackwood frowned. How long would that take? Too long if we do it conventionally, Eugene admitted. But if I interface directly with the station's central computer core, I might be able to do it in time. A chorus of protests erupted from around the room. Korvac stepped forward, her eyes blazing. Eugene, you can't. The strain could kill you, especially in your weakened state. Eugene met her gaze steadily. We don't have a choice. If we don't stop this attack, everyone on this station will die. Korvac was silent for a long moment, her skin swirling with conflicting emotions. Then, to everyone's surprise, she said, Then I'm coming with you. What do you mean? Eugene asked, confusion evident on his face. Korvac turned to Dr. Elias Thornton, who had just entered the hub. Your research into human Rizian neural interfaces, could you use it to link me into the system alongside Eugene? Thornton's eyes widened. Theoretically, yes, but the procedure is incredibly dangerous. We've never attempted it on this scale. Do it, Korvac said firmly. As Thornton began preparations, Commander Jack Hawkins and Vexara approached Blackwood and Zaxler, their expressions grim. Sirs, Hawkins said in a low voice, we have reason to believe there's a GES agent on the station. They could sabotage Asimov and Korvac's efforts if we don't find them first. Zaxler's eyes narrowed. Then we must begin a station-wide search immediately. But quietly, we can't risk tipping off the agent. As Hawkins and Vexara departed to organize the manhunt, Eugene and Korvac were led to a specially prepared chamber near the central computer core. Thornton and his team worked quickly, attaching a dizzying array of sensors and neural interfaces to their bodies. Are you sure about this? Eugene asked Korvac as they lay side by side, preparing for the digital plunge. Korvac reached out and took his hand, her skin pulsing with a pattern he recognized as affection and grit. I'm sure. Whatever happens, we face it together. Thornton gave them one last concerned look. Good luck, he said before activating the system. Eugene felt a rush of sensation as his consciousness was pulled into the digital realm. The physical world faded away, replaced by a vast, abstract landscape of data and code. He could sense Korvac's presence beside him, a comforting anchor in the chaotic digital sea. Together, they began to navigate the complex virtual representation of Nexus 7 systems. They could see the damage caused by the GES attack, great swathes of corrupted code and crumbling data structures. We need to start rebuilding, Eugene said, his voice sounding strange in this incorporeal form. Let's begin with the core operating systems and work our way out. As they worked, combining human logic with Rizian intuition in ways never before possible, Eugene marveled at their synergy. Each of them brought unique strengths to the task, filling in gaps in each other's knowledge and approach. But the work was grueling, and Eugene could feel the strain on his mind growing with each passing moment. He pushed through the pain, knowing that failure wasn't an option. Meanwhile, in the physical world, Hawkins and Vexara led their teams through the station's winding corridors and cramped maintenance shafts. The GES agent could be anyone, hiding in plain sight among the station's diverse population. As they searched, systems continued to fail across Nexus 7. Tensions rose among the station's inhabitants, with some humans and Rizians beginning to cast suspicious glances at one another. The fragile trust they had built was being tested to its limits. Back in the virtual realm, Eugene and Korvac finally reached the heart of the GES malware, a viciously complex firewall that guarded the core of the attack. Breaking through it would require both of them to expose their minds fully to the system, risking digital attack or worse. "Are you ready?" Eugene asked, feeling a mix of fear and drive. Korvac's presence pulsed with affirmation. "Together," she said simply. They launched themselves at the firewall, their combined consciousness becoming a battering ram of pure will and intellect. The barrier resisted, sending jolts of pain through their linked minds, but they pressed on. Just as they felt their strength beginning to fail, the firewall shattered. They surged forward, purging the GES malware and beginning the process of implementing their new unified operating system. As Nexus 7 systems slowly came back online, stabilizing under the new protocols, Hawkins and Vexara finally cornered the GES agent in a remote maintenance area. The ensuing fight was brutal, testing the limits of their human-Rizian teamwork. The agent, enhanced with advanced cybernetics, moved with inhuman speed and precision. Hawkins found himself hard-pressed to keep up, relying on Vexara's superior reflexes to counter the agent's attacks. "Now!" Hawkins shouted as he feinted to the left. Vexara understood immediately, her tendrils lashing out to ensnare the agent's legs, while Hawkins tackled them from behind. Together they managed to subdue the operative, but not before a final encrypted transmission was sent to an unknown destination. As the immediate crisis passed and Nexus 7 began to stabilize, Eugene and Korvac were carefully disconnected from the computer core. They lay unconscious, their vitals weak but steady, as medical teams rushed to assess the damage from their digital ordeal. The station had survived, but the scars of the attack were evident everywhere. Damaged systems, frightened inhabitants, and the looming question of what GES would do next all took a toll on the minds of Nexus 7's leaders. As Eugene and Korvac were rushed to the medical bay, their hands still clasped tightly together, Admiral Blackwood turned to General Zaxelor. "This isn't over," Blackwood said grimly. Zaxelor's tendrils rippled with agreement. "No," he replied. "I fear it's only the beginning." "Beginning?" the Rizian general said, his eyes fixed on the display displaying the aftermath of the attack. As the immediate crisis subsided, the true scope of the damage became apparent. Entire sections of Nexus 7 lay dark and silent, their systems fried beyond recognition. The station's inhabitants, both human and Rizian, moved through the corridors with a mixture of shell-shocked disbelief and unwavering persistence. In the medical bay, Eugene and Korvac lay side by side, their bodies still as their minds slowly disengaged from the station's systems. Dr. Thornton hovered over them, his face creased with worry as he monitored their vital signs. "They're stabilizing," he announced to the anxious crowd of officials gathered nearby. "But the neural strain was immense. It'll take time for them to fully recover." Admiral Blackwood nodded, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "They saved us all. Make sure they receive the best care possible." As the days turned into weeks, Nexus 7 slowly came back to life. The new operating system Eugene and Korvac had created proved to be more resilient and efficient than anyone had dared hope. It integrated human and Rizian technologies in ways that baffled even the most experienced engineers. Eugene and Korvac's recovery was slow but steady. They spent long hours in rehabilitation, relearning how to use their bodies after the intense digital immersion. But even as they struggled with physical therapy, their minds were racing with new ideas and insights. "It's like I can still feel the station," Eugene confided to Korvac one evening as they sat in the medical bay's observation lounge. "Not just the systems, but the people, the way they all came together during the crisis." Korvac's skin rippled with understanding. "I feel it too. We've glimpsed something profound, Eugene. a new way of connecting, of understanding each other. Their shared experience became the catalyst for change on Nexus 7. As they recovered, Eugene and Korvac found themselves at the center of a new initiative, the Interspecies Cooperation Council. This body, composed of humans, Rizians, and representatives from other species who had joined the station's community, was tasked with fostering unity and understanding among Nexus 7's diverse population. The council's first meeting was held in a newly refurbished conference room, its walls adorned with artwork from a dozen different worlds. Eugene and Korvac sat side by side at the head of the table, their presence a living symbol of what could be achieved through cooperation. "We've been given a unique opportunity," Eugene began, his voice strong despite the lingering effects of his ordeal. Nexus 7 was built as a symbol of unity between humans and Rizians. Now it can become something even greater, a beacon of hope for interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. As the council debated and planned, Dr. Thornton made a breakthrough in his lab. His study of Eugene and Korvac's physiological changes during their digital merger led to a revolutionary discovery, a way to create enhanced empathic connections between different species. The procedure, which Thornton dubbed the Nexus Protocol, involved a complex series of neural adjustments and biochemical treatments. It promised to bridge the gap between species in ways previously thought impossible. When Thornton presented his findings to the council, the room erupted in a mix of excitement and trepidation. The potential implications were staggering, but so were the risks. "We need volunteers to test the procedure," Thornton explained, his eyes scanning the room. "Individuals willing to forge a permanent empathic link with a member of another species." A hush fell over the assembled representatives. The idea was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. To share thoughts and emotions across the boundaries of biology, it seemed like something out of science fiction. Eugene and Korvac shared a long look, their eyes conveying volumes without a word being spoken. Then, as one, they stood. "We'll do it," Eugene said, his voice steady. Korvac nodded, her skin pulsing with a pattern that conveyed both nervousness and perseverance. The preparations for the procedure took weeks. Every possible precaution was taken, every scenario analyzed and reanalyzed. Finally, on a day that would be remembered in the annals of Nexus 7's history, Eugene and Korvac entered Thornton's lab. The procedure itself was a blur of sensations. Flashes of light, waves of dizziness, moments of clarity interspersed with periods of confusion. When it was over, Eugene opened his eyes to find Korvac looking back at him. But this time, he saw more than just her physical form. He felt her presence in his mind, a warm, comforting glow of emotion and thought. "It worked," Korvac whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Eugene nodded, unable to speak as he was overwhelmed by the depth of their connection. As news of the successful Nexus protocol spread, Nexus 7 found itself thrust into the galactic spotlight. Diplomats, scientists, and curious individuals from across known space flocked to the station, eager to witness this new frontier in interspecies relations. Eugene and Korvac became the face of this new era, their deep bond a testament to what was possible. They worked tirelessly, using their unique connection to mediate disputes, foster understanding, and push the boundaries of cross-species cooperation. But even as Nexus 7 flourished, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. GES, the shadowy organization behind the cyber attack, had not forgotten their defeat. They watched the station's rise with growing anger and fear, seeing in it a threat to their vision of human superiority. In the depths of space, far from the bright beacon of Nexus 7, GES leaders gathered to plan their next move. Warships were summoned, weapons primed, and a plan set in motion that would shake the very foundations of the fledgling Interspecies Alliance. On Nexus 7, oblivious to the gathering storm, Eugene and Korvac stood on an observation deck. They watched as ships from 100 worlds moved in the space around the station, a visual representation of the community they had helped to build. "We've come so far," Eugene mused, his thoughts intertwining with Korvac's through their empathic link. Korvac's response was a wave of emotion, pride, hope, and a touch of apprehension. "Yes," she said aloud, her tendrils curling around Eugene's hand. "But I fear our greatest challenge is yet to come." As if in answer to her words, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Eugene and Korvac turned as one, their minds already reaching out to interface with Nexus 7 systems. On the horizon, barely visible against the backdrop of stars, a fleet of ships appeared. The GES attack had begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.